Pilipinas! Game ka na ba for today's video?
Ito ang number one podcast sa Pilipinas na ngayon pa lamang ilalabas.
Ang podcast na walang inaatrasan, walang inuurungan, tunay na serbisyo, dugsowa at kabaklaan lamang.
Dahil sa mga akla,
Angat ang buhay ng lahat.
Shot puno!
uy, anong oras na?
OMG?
OMG!
OMG! Oh My Globalization with Jello, Marko, and Angelo. Ayan na nga! Welcome back! Pero, bago ang lahat ng yan, magpapakilala muna tayo dahil ako naman, ang cutie pie na dito tayo all the way from the land of Sanggipsalan, mga nagtatayuhang kape at tunay kapampangan. Ako, si Jello Serrano at sino ka naman dyan, Mare?
Ayan, tama ka dyan. Ako naman ang natatanging main, lead, at only vocal ng isang girl group na never nag-debut. Ako, ito lang to, fam! Marko Suliman! At sino ka naman dyan? Oo.
Hey! This is what dreams are made of. Ako nga ang kilalang sumisinghot ng Tajin dahil ako nagmamayari ng bansang Tunisia, Malaysia, Philippines. Kilala rin bilang Mama Rose ng ABCom 2A. Ako si Angelo from Lubao, Pampanga. At ito ang
OMG! Oh My Globalization with Marko, Jello, and Angelo.
Tama po.
At ayan, welcome back mga kameme. Welcome back. Panibagong episode ng natin, ng podcast natin. So ayun, before ng lahat ng yan at tumungo sa panibagong topic naman na pag-uusapan natin for today's episode, balikan muna natin kung ano yung mga nangyari noong first episode.
Tama, kasi ganda ng reviews.
Actually, ang daming dislike.
Ganun ang most hated podcast.
At least sabi nila,
Bad publicity
is still publicity.
Tama po.
Tama yan.
Uy, joke time naman.
Pero ayan, so balikan nga muna natin yung mga few points lang about our first EP. Of course, ang topic natin nung first EP is our own globalization story. Of course, nung una, dinefine muna natin kung ano nga ba ang meaning and concept ng globalization. And ito nga, yung interconnectedness and interdependence of people and countries. And ayun, kanya-kanya nga tayong nag-share ng own experience regarding sa ating mga globalization story. And of course, kung nandito ka man, nakikinig from our first episode, sana naman na-enjoy nyo ang aming pilot episode. Diba? At
take off, parang
take
airplane.
off, diba? Parang sabi nga nila, pilot episode, pero walang
Airplane plano.
Tawa.
Tanungan pa tayo ng airline, di ba? Oo.
Nagtalo pa tayo kung anong bet natin name ng airline. Gano. Pero ayan, moving on, dahil kailangan natin mag-move on, di ba? Sa lahat talaga na aspect ng ating buhay, kailangan natin mag-move on kahit ano pa yung mga pinagdadaanan natin. And with that being said, in this episode, pangalawang episode na natin mga beme, pag-uusapan naman natin ang concept ng economic globalization.
Sino ka naman? Pang matalino na naman to, be.
Oo nga, pang matalino. Hindi ko kaya.
Parang hindi natin ito branding. Parang hindi naman natin ito naging branding.
Parang yung episode na to, it's very like yung podcast natin, medyo umaangat siya ng hindi ko alam.
Oo, lang. Siya, parang siya roller coaster yung una.
Oo.
Gumagano tayo.
Ayan. So speaking of economic globalization nga, isang aspect or malaking aspeto talaga ng economic globalization ay ang trade, in which, ayun nga, obvious naman sa aming title na trade G. So Mama Ru, ikaw naman, i-discuss mo naman kung saan nga ba nanggaling yung concept ng ating title for this episode 2.
Well, back in the days kasi, remember,
Ayun na naman tayo.
siguro ang trade naman kasi makikita yan in everything, di ba?
Totoo.
Trade ng pictures, ng portfolio, ng Instagram username. Pero may specific kasi, something na ginagamit ko yung trade. Hindi po namin siya pwede i-disclose dahil hindi po kami sponsored by today's video. Pero, I think yung buong kabaklaan naman, alam mo yung pinagsasabi natin, trade.
It goes with the yellow and black.
Yes, yellow and black. Sabi nga nila,
Yellow cab?
Black and yellow, gano'n.
Tama.
Sabi nga ni Carmina, Villarreal.
Pero well.
Shubim po tayo ngayon.
Pero seriously speaking, di ba? Siyempre since economics, globalization, of course, there's always gonna be a conversation about trade, di ba? And we have to really consider the effects of trade, no? To our country's economics, to other countries' economics, ganyan. Pero para mas mabigyan pa tayo ng further, knowledge and depth towards these concepts, discuss natin siya. Sige, Jello, baka meron kang input, diba?
Sige, tama na ang dog show na tumuho na tayo sa seryosong aspect and part ng ating podcast, which is, i-discuss na natin ang concept talaga ng economic globalization. Pero first and foremost, i-define muna natin kung ano nga ba ang economic globalization. So of course, ang economic globalization daw ay ang increasing interdependence of world economies. And as a result of the growing scale of the cross-border trade. Ayan na nga. So dito na papasok ang concept talaga ng trade. And of course, in line with this, yung trade ng mga commodities and yung mga services and yung flow ng international capital and yung wide and rapid spread of technologies. Ayan. So parang with the very yung meaning pa lang talaga ng economic globalization, binabanggit na talaga ang concept ng trade. So malaking aspect talaga ang trade sa economic globalization. Ayan. So ayun, tungo din naman tayo sa very infamous Adam Smith na for sure ang ating mga listeners ay quite familiar with him dahil of course napag-aralan din naman natin siya nung high school sa mga iba't ibang subjects natin like drafting.
Magkano ba yun yung Willow Smith? Ganun.
Drafting pa pero napag-usapan natin siya sa hekasi, sa mga history subjects natin. Yan, mga araling panlipunan, ayan. Si Adam Smith nga, and of course, siya ang father of economics. And ang very famous book niya is yung the book The Wealth of Nations, which is ayun nga dito niya na incorporate yung concept ng free trade, and yung in-emphasize niya dito yung countries must free up their citizens to produce and buy goods as they please. So, hindi lang ito sa domestic aspect, pero sa foreign aspect din dapat ng world market. And of course, kailangan din cheaper yung rate than what they can provide at home country. So, isang example dyan is kunyari yung Philippines. Sige, huwag na tayo magpapakalayo mga mare, dito na lang tayo sa Pilipinas dahil mahal ang ticket. So, isang example dyan is yung, for instance, yung Ratan or yung Abaka. Knowing the Philippines is mayaman tayo sa resources na to. So, dito tayo nag-excel or ito yung product na nagbibigay sa atin ng advantage. So, dapat ito yung ino-offer natin sa buong mundo, which is sa other countries, hindi sila present or hindi ganong kalakihan yung production nila. And in return, yung mga countries like the Arab nations, for instance, which is yung sa oil naman, mayaman sila sa oil. So, sa concept ng trade, dito napapasok yung pag-produce nila, yung wide produce ng oil sa buong mundo kasi nga sila yung pinaka maraming resources ng oil. And ayun nga, sabi din ni Adam Smith, it is the maxim of every prudent master of a family never to attempt give it a thumbs up. Hindi pa tayo patapos. Medyo lalo na lito lang.
Paano ba?
Dahil pamatalinuhan to. To make at home what it will cost him more to make than to buy. So of course, yung nga naman tailor, no, hindi naman siya mag-a-attempt na gumawa ng sapatos, pero bibili siya ng sapatos sa shoemaker or sa taong gumagawa talaga ng sapatos, and in return, ang shoemaker hindi naman siya bibili ng damit sa ibang tao, but dun sa tailor lang. So in that sense, kung ano yung product mo, yun yung ino-offer mo, and in return, kung ano yung mga hindi nabibili ng ibang or hindi present sa ibang tao, yun yung binibili nila from you. Ganon. At ayan, tungo naman tayo sa ibang aspect ng economic globalization, which is yung liberalism at ang neoliberalism. And of course, very huge aspect din siya. And of course, with that, Marko, ano nga ba ang liberalism at neoliberalism rather?
Ayun, so I'll just try to make it as concise and short as possible. No? Para at least, syempre, these concepts, when you hear these words, medyo ang laki.
Nakakahilo.
Let's try to make it as easily understandable as possible. So, yeah, during the birth of, syempre, yung tinatawag nating modernization of countries and as well as yung mga industrialization, everything in between. Nagkaroon din ng new concepts of economic ideas and ideologies, no. So, yung classical liberalism, matagal na siyang sinusundan o pinaniniwalaan ng maraming mga economists during that time kasi according to definition or to practice, classical liberalism intends to define na there is limited to no intervention of the government when it comes to exchange of ideas, of products, of services, ganyan. So there's literally almost non-existent, no? If wala talaga, like almost non-existent, na merong say ang gobyerno sa mga ganitong classic exchange. However, with neoliberalism, nagkakaroon na ng konting intervention ng mga governments provided that they are backed with the privatization of these commodities. For example, electricity, for example, water, oil, yung mga basic commodities, no? Even if they are privatized or they are owned by private businesses and institutions and corporations, most of the time, they are still intervened by government regulation. So, kumbaga, ang free market, whereas in classical liberalism, there's literally the support of a free market, of a free trade, where there's no regulations. With neoliberalism, the same concept applies. However, yung regulations na binibigay or ini-impose ng mga government institutions ay nakaayon o nakadepende sa kung ano ang pinaka-objective ng free market at free trade. Personally, ako, hindi talaga ako very fan ng liberalism at neoliberalism kasi it just gives the idea that private ownership of basic commodities that are inherent to be something that you give to a person naturally as their right is being commodified, diba? Na parang kailangan sila dapat owned by private businesses, or kung hindi man private businesses, regulated sila by the government. Pero most of the time, yung mga private businesses mismo na nag-own or nagko-control ng mga ganitong klaseng commodities or mga ganitong klaseng necessities, government-backed din naman sila. So parang in a way, in a sense, they all just work together to to
capitalize.
Yeah, exactly. So like, it's a really problematic ideology for me, I guess. So medyo hindi ako masyadong approve sa idea. Although it's very important to discuss kasi it has become a foundation of so many more ideologies. Even in the economic and political spectrum that we have today. There are left-wing ideologies for the economics of a certain country. There are right-wing, there are centrist, mga ganon. So like, in the wide political economic spectrum, you could see that the understanding of these concepts would also later eventually help out people to understand more, wider concepts in a more broader sense. Ganon. So, yeah, I think it's important to note. However, personally, I don't adhere to these kinds of ideologies. Kasi nga, it's against my principles.
Okay,
Kasi
gets.
Ganyan.
Gets yan. Actually, kahit na yung neoliberalism, it is said na parang most of the economies sa buong mundo, ito yung inadapt nilang ideology sa kanilang mga socio-economic structure. At ayun nga naman, may point din naman ang resident patroller natin si Miss Marko, di ba?
Tama po, opo.
Oo, na baka may tendency talaga na maging commodity, yung mga bagay na dapat binibigay lang din naman talaga sa atin at the first place. So parang, yun nga, parang in a capitalist world, hindi talaga yan matatanggal. At this point,
din sa network ng capitalistic system.
Kasi like, sobrang, alam mo yun, parang hindi lang siya isang micro problem. It's a macro problem actually.
Yeah,
the whole world is experiencing it right now under this structure talaga. So parang hindi siya pwede, or parang it's almost inevitable for us to parang maging linya or parang kumaliwado. Parang umalis dun sa structure na yun dahil nga
kasi siyang na-impose. Sila siyang ginagamit.
Yeah. Ayun naman. Thanks for that naman, Miss Marko Soliman. Ngayon naman, tungo naman tayo sa concept naman. Bumalik naman tayo dun sa concept naman ng trade. Pero trade and labor. And of course, Mama Ru, baka gusto mo kami bigyan ng further knowledge about this one?
Pero before ako magbigay, my little notes about trade and labor, balik muna tayo sa sinabi ni MX Marko about liberalismo. Well, hindi naman talaga maganda ang liberalismo. Like in every aspect naman. It's not really good in terms of journalism, in terms of the press. And dahil nga Women's Month ngayon, Happy Women's Month mga bading. So dapat tayo ay maging radikal na feminismo, hindi liberal na feminismo.
Tama po.
Ayan. Side note lang po, and also Miss Nadine, I hope you enjoyed episode 1.
Hey, Miss Nadine! If you're watching this episode, and we miss you, bam soon.
Nasa Paris siya, be.
Sinunod ako actually, connecting friends.
Actually, kaya nga ako nakaano ngayon. Kasi,
malamig.
Oo. Hindi lang
nandito ako sa may summer ako sa Italy. May summer sa Greece. Pero speaking of trade and labor, ayan. Well, I'll just keep it very, very short and very, very concise dahil para maintindihan naman ng lahat ng ating viewers. So basically, trade is ito yung known na import and export ng goods and services across international boundaries. And also with trade, specifically international trade, nagkakaroon tayo ng stimulate economic growth but ng mga countries na interconnected. Well, before globalization naman, meron na tayong barter trade. Way before.
Kung ano pa nga, parang Chinese civilization pa.
I think that was pre-Spanish era. Talagang very inherent na yung trade talaga, even without the concept of globalization.
The concept of barter, no?
Barter. Dahil nga, di ba, we always want to give love. Di ba? Give lang tayo.
Share.
Sabi nga ng Bible song, take and receive. Ayan.
Amen.
Tapos in terms naman ng economics, well, labor economics is more on the amount ng physical, mental, and social effort to produce goods and services sa economy. Dahil din dito nagagawa ang mga products natin na tulad na furnitures, books, every kind of product technically from fashion, technology to HR and etc. And yun nga, yung supplies nagiging siya and kailangan kasi na may manpower, expertise and service to turn yung materials na meron tayo, wood, cotton, silk, o ano man yung mga bedding materials na gamitin, kung gusto naman ng recycled or not, to finished products and services that is magagamit siya also for trade itself. Ayun.
So ayun na nga ang concept ng trade at labor na diniscuss nga ni Mama Ru. At ngayon, tungo naman tayo sa mga kanya-kanya nating mga economic globalization advocacy.
Ayun na universe.
So ayan, mag-eeraton po kami. Mag-eeraton muna tayo, kung may dahil napaka serious and napaka complex ng ating topic for today's episode. Pero ayan, ready na ba kayo mga meme sa mga kanya-kanya yung mga advocacy?
Ganito ba, para may challenge, kapag i-introduce yung advocacy, sabihin ng name, ang lugar sa Pampanga, at sabihin nyo, state your advocacy. Ganyan. Parang Miss Universe.
Sige.
Tama yan. Pero dagdag din natin yung state your sun sign, rising sign,
Zodiac.
Shubim tayo.
Shubim ko.
Mag-naasa yun, I think. Baka matapos na alas 2.
Mauna na ako sa mga advocacies dahil I'm strong. Di ba kapala talaga mukha ko, be? Saka nakalagay kasi sa script. First, Jello's advocacy.
Hindi tayo magre-reveal ng script, be.
Bawal yan. Pero kung gusto niyo po ng script, cash niyo po kami sa Gcash.
Bibigay namin yung
099
Google link.
Yung spreadsheet. Ang dami ko na. Sige na, start. Sige, kunyari. Candidate number 1!
Hi, my name is Jello Serrano. I am representing Accla City, Pampanga. And in regards with today's episode, Economic Globalization, here are my advocacies. So first, my first advocacy dahil, okay, konting background lang. Wait lang muna. Break muna tayo sa medyo seryoso muna tayo. So, konting background lang naman sa aking mga advocacies. Kasi, actually, when I'm thinking of economic globalization advocacies, ginawa ko siya na parang very timely and relevant sa ating setup right now and yung situation natin right now, which is, ayun nga, nasa middle pa din naman tayo ng pandemic. Like, after 2 years, grabe. Actually, almost 3 years na. Oo, na nasa pandemya pa din tayo. And, undeniably, hindi pa rin masyadong nakaka-recover. Not only our country, the Philippines, but the rest of the world sa negative effects na dala nga ng threat ng COVID-19. So in line with that, doon ko binis or pinattern yung ating mga advocacy. So first, balik tayo dun sa Miss Universe.
Go.
First of all, number 1, my advocacy is to create more jobs and provide enough pay and profit for, the working class and for all actually, yung right compensation. Kasi una sa lahat, yan yung pinaka malaking problem din when it comes to employment and sa economic aspect ng not only sa Philippines but sa the rest of the world actually. Kasi ang daming mga underpaid workers, like for instance, dito sa Philippines, yung mga frontliners natin, yung mga nurses, mga medtechs, mga doctors, sobrang underpaid nila. So parang paano nila magsusustain yung ganong, alam mo yun, just your basic needs for your everyday needs to survive. Parang hindi enough yung ganong amount of money na inaano ng government, kasi most of the frontliners are parang mga public servants lang din naman, and yun yung isa sa mga gusto kong pagtuunan ng pansin. And of course, to create more jobs din, kasi ang dami din namang mga na-lay off ng mga mga workers, ng mga employees sa mga companies dahil nga dala na nga ng pandemya kasi ang lala talaga ng epekto ng pandemya sa atin, 'di ba? Kasi parang lalo na nung mga bandang 2020 yata, di ba?
Nagkaroon talaga ng recession.
Di ba? Like, ng recession, ng crisis talaga, pati pa nga sa mga groceries, di ba? Nagkaubusan na ng mga stocks, grabe po talaga. Kaya nga, parang yan yung mga gusto, una sa mga gusto kong pagtuunan ng pansin is to create more jobs and provide enough pay and profit. And in line with that, ang pangalawa ko advocacy is to attract domestic and foreign investors. So when we say domestic investors, dito yung mga investors na nasa local context or within our countries. Kumbaga, kunyari sa Philippines, and actually sa Philippines, ang dami nga mga foreign investors. Medyo actually isa sa mga nabasa ko sa isang online article na maraming local investors sa Philippines. Kaya nga lang, masyadong, kumbaga hindi maganda yung mga provisions or mga laws ng government. Kaya parang nawawalan ng trust to invest yung mga investors and more so yung mga foreign investors, which is yun yung nawala sa atin for the past few years. Kasi alam ko parang bumaba ata ang GDP. If I'm not mistaken, sorry po kung mali po ako, no?
Tama.
Pero bumaba ang GDP natin and isang dahilan nga niyan yung mga pag-alis ng mga foreign investors. So, isa sa mga advocacy ko sa economic globalization is to attract more and encourage investors na mag-invest sa ating bansa, and not only in the Philippines but also to other countries na affect din ng pandemic, para alam mo yun, happy lahat. Kumbaga, lahat ng countries is may opportunity na makapag-create ng jobs, makapag, go back to the normal state. Kahit na mahirap pa din siya at this point. Pero, ayun, hopefully, soon enough, makakapag-recover natin yung economy natin. And lastly,
I would just like to add, dun sa idea ng foreign investors and domestic investors. Kasi, ideally, the ideal situation is that we get to attract foreign and domestic investors talaga. Kasi it's important to have a good relationship with international affairs, diba? However, kasi we have to understand that in accordance to attracting and producing parang agreements with foreign investors, we have to also assert our right as a nation. Alam mo yun, hindi pwedeng hindi mawawala yung very strict provisions that we have to adhere to in regard to ensuring na our rights as a country pa din, as a nation is well guarded, diba? Kasi ang hirap naman na parang tanggap lang tayo ng investors, tapos nakikita natin na abuso na pala tayo. Tayo
parang,
di
ba nga parang known sa ating country ang cheap labor or yung labor force.
Exactly.
Diba? So parang,
able to create more jobs, you have to ensure that pay people right, diba?
Yeah. Tama, diba? Kasi yan din yung isa sa mga problems din. Kasi parang tinitik advantage yung labor force natin. Specifically us Filipinos. Kasi ang dami, like, for example, yung mga nurses, yung kunyari sa call center, ayan yung mga BPO companies, tinitik advantage talaga yung cheap labor force. Kasi nga, doon sila mas magpa-profit. Kasi dahil kung i-compare mo yung revenue nila sa mga binabayad nila sa mga employees, hindi aabot yan sa kalahati. Sobrang baba lang talaga. Yun ang isa sa mga dapat i-demand natin sa government and sa mga international organizations like yung GATT, yung World Trade Organizations to, make laws na that would promote yung mga rights and yung right compensation sa mga workers natin. And ayun nga, lastly, ito na, pinaka-last na to, is yung stronger free trade with, yun nga, yung relations to what Adam Smith, kung ano yung sinabi niya dun sa book. Kung ano din yung specialization ng isang country, like sa certain product. For instance nga, yung sa Arab nation, yung oil. Ayan, very good example yung sa Arab nation, yung oil nila. I think at this point, kasi parang hindi magme-make sense na parang mas mag-close yung mga borders ng mga countries within each other. Kasi parang mas kailangan natin yung interconnectedness ngayon yung interdependence natin ngayon. Dahil nga parang lahat tayo is affected by the pandemic. So, yun yung last na advocacy ko. So, to reiterate lang, my 3 advocacies. So, first is to create more jobs and provide enough pay and profit. And number 2 is to attract domestic and foreign investors. And last is yung stronger free trade and yung specialization ng isang yung specialization ng country sa isang product nila. Ayun. So, yun lang naman sa akin, no? So, tungo naman tayo sa'yo, Meme Marko. Ano yung advocacy
mo ako? Candidate ako.
Okay. So now, let's proceed to candidate number 2, MX Marko Soliman.
Nasabi na po niya yung name ko, but I am here to reintroduce myself. My name is Marko Miguel C. Soliman from Mexico, Pampanga, and my advocacy is to call for the removal of excise taxes on oil. Ayan, yan po ang aking pinaka-advocacy na feeling ko talaga sobrang apektado talaga ang global village, ang global economy. And I will elaborate on this further. Actually, nakita ko itong demand na ito from one of my favorite senators or one of my favorite parang politicians running for a position in the Senate, Mr. Nery Colmenares. Please vote for him. Shout out po kay Mr. Nery Colmenares. Ayan, kay Tito Nery tayo. Oo. Ayan, so kasi nakita ko sa isang tweet niya one time na parang nagkaroon siya ng statement regarding the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Well, actually not necessarily, pero I'll go deep into that further later on. However, diba recently with the news going around, tumataas ang gasolina dito sa bansa. Napakataas. Sobrang taas. Actually, pauwi pa lang kami kanina. Nakita ko nagtaas na naman siya ng 2 pesos. Pero ako, ano na tayo?
Girl, alam mo ba, kung hindi ko nagkakamali, last time ko sa Makati, 80 pesos na ang gas.
Sobra, 80 pesos.
Oh my gosh.
Gas. Parang ako, besin ka kukuha ng 80 pesos.
Grabe. Kawawa din yung mga like yung mga jeepney driver.
Oo, sobra.
Exactly. I will actually explain on that later.
Okay. O, sige,
pero,
go.
Yan, isa sa mga nakita kong tweets ni Nery Colmenares is yung a possible solution to actually parang deflate yung price increase ng oil dito sa Pilipinas. And that is to remove excise taxes. Ayan, VAT and excise taxes to be exact. Kasi ang retail price pala ng oil ay for gasoline according to my information is 65.95 pesos lang. 65
Per liter.
Per liter, oo. Per liter siya. 65.95 pesos lang per liter. Although, ang VAT and excise tax would be 17 pesos.
Ay?
17 pesos. Exactly. Ang laki ng tax na ina-add up nila doon sa retail price. And of course, kapag syempre meron na yung patong and everything maliban dun sa tax, di ba? So, kapag tinanggal mo lahat ng additional na patong na yon, ang price pala ng retail price pala dapat supposedly ng gasoline na unleaded would be 48 pesos only. 48 pesos lamang. At isipin natin na yung tax na yan, binabayaran ng taong bayan yan. Saan ba siya napupunta? Sino ba ang kumukuha? Sino ba ang nakikinabang? Diba?
Yan ang ating malalaman in this episode.
Hindi kasi nakaka-frustrate. Ang dami mga tao na nagtatanong, paano po natin i-address yung concern regarding sa national economy kung tatanggalin yung mga tax? in the first place, ang tax, syempre, naka-place na yan sa sa overall spending ng government and stuff like that to ensure na maayos yung takbo ng economy. However, kapag niremove mo yan, dapat ma-ensure pa rin ng national government na kaya pa rin mag-flow ng pera sa mismong economy natin. Ngayon, kaya lang naman din nagkakaroon ng tax, di ba? Is to make sure merong funding for government, for projects, parang supported for the people, started by the government, from the national government. So, ibig sabihin, if they just reallocate or allocate and spend wisely on projects with the use of the taxpayers' money, hindi tayo magmamroblema sa national economy natin unless kinukurakot siya. Diba? So, yun yung point din eh. Ngayon, how does it affect the global village in a very general sense? Kasi this oil price hike, even if we would like to believe it or not, is actually an effect of the current conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Russia is considered to be one of the most biggest may oil reserves and biggest import and exporter of oil reserves, oil production, ganyan. So, ibig sabihin, lahat ng naging against ng ganap sa conflict between Russia and Ukraine, especially those who are against the idea of Russia invading Ukraine, of course, nagkakaroon sila ng boycotting, ganyan, ng separation or cutting ties off with this country.
Yeah.
And on a global scale, that affects every country there is. How? A great example would be niyak na ako no? Kasi ang Philippines, kumukuha siya ng direct supply of gas or oil rather from neighboring countries. These neighboring countries, like for example South Korea, ganyan, and everyone else, kumukuha sila directly from Russia. Yan yung basically ganun siya.
Okay.
And nagkakaroon ng conflict ang Russia between a lot of organizations and a lot of countries. For example, NATO, United Nations, which also Philippines is a part of. Ang daming nagkakaroon ng conflict even between the price of oil. Diba? So, eventually, since we have to adjust to this super world or super country having conflicts with smaller countries or like territories, ganyan, yung mga basic commodities natin, basic necessities for a livable condition of life, na-affected din. And with the whole oil price hike, hindi lang kasi oil talaga, gasolina ang naapektuhan. Pati yung mga commodities or mga produces natin, like for example, rice, for example, yung sa food, sa water. Kasi syempre gumagamit ng gas to transport these goods. So kapag gumamit ka ng mga transport services, transportation, tataas din syempre yung patong dun sa mga ganong
sa mga pagkain.
Exactly. And even sa transportation natin dito sa Pilipinas, lalong-lalo na pinaka-apektado ang mga drivers natin. Mga jeepney drivers natin, since they had to shoulder all these increase in oil price, so we have to compensate for that shouldering of money. So syempre, ibibigay nila, ipapasa nila yon sa yung burden sa mga commuters. Like,
tataas ang masahe.
Ang minimum fare. Yeah, exactly. So like, lahat apektado. And this is a very, very prime example of how economic globalization or the interrelatedness and interconnectedness of economies are manifested within. So, yun yung pinaka-advocacy ko, very targeted siya with the whole oil price hike thing, which is to regulate or at least remove actually totally the VAT and excise tax as adopted from my favorite Tito Senator, Mr. Nery Colmenares. Oo.
Tama.
It's a really, it's a domino effect talaga. Even if we'd like to believe it or not, no?
Yeah.
Talagang apektado tayo in so many ways. And I think with regulating or removing excise and bad tax, we get to breathe more. Allowance for a more breather. Ganun.
Tama.
Breather.
Tama yan.
So yun talaga ang pinaka-advocacy ko.
Ayan.
So naman ang next ating candidate, no? Introduce na natin siya, no?
Sige, Marko, ikaw mag-introduce sa kanya. Sino kaya
Ayan,
siya?
pasok!
Sige, pasok ka na.
Ayan, candidate number 3!
Hi. Hello. Hi. Thank you po, Tropang Pochi, for inviting me. It's such an honor. Ako nga pala, si Angelo Gabriel Basalo, pero kilala sa gabi bilang Babos Paraiso. Not the influencer or actress kung sino man si Babos Paraiso, but the drag queen, Babos Paraiso. Ayan. At ang aking advocacy ay my family. My family is the most important thing in my life.
Hindi!
Tama.
Pero,
tayo
in a more serious note. Ayan, magiging seryoso na naman tayo. Galing sa akin, magiging serious tayo. So, well, in terms of the pandemic, well, a lot of people have turned to television screens, to movies, to a lot of creative things, creative outlets talaga. And may mga nagbubukas ng YouTube channels. Shout out BJ Pascual. Siya pong ating, resident viewer. Patroller natin si Mr. BJ. And I clearly remember may videos with BJ Pascual with Ed Mejina. And banggit nila na ang ating creative industry ay sobrang konti ang funding. Well, kung titignan mo naman, before even the pandemic, sobrang konti ng funding ng government for our art sector. Well, our art sector does not just include the films, but also design, tourism, ano pa ba yung mga kasama dyan? Different kinds of forms, paintings, music, literature. Sobrang liit lang talaga, like sobrang baba. And bilang ako, official ng parte ng creative industry. Yes.
Congrats po.
Thank you po. Sa totoo lang na, the industry is really, really small. Everyone knows everyone. Like, it's a very handful amount. Like, mapitik mo talaga siya sa kamay mo. Like, if you know a film, someone in the film industry, may kilala siya from the fashion industry, may kilala siya from ganyan.
Yeah.
It's just really, really small. Like, para lang siya, squad. Para lang isang university or isang classroom. Ganun na siya kaliit. And I think my advocacy would be really na the government funding for the art sector. At ayun nga. So to continue, well, sa ating mga dear audiences, nagkaroon ng
technical difficulties.
Technical difficulties. Medyo kasi rainy sa Mexico ngayon. And baka nandun si Lady Gaga at si Ariana, I think. Pero going back to the topic, so ba tayo nag-pick up kay Bretman Rock? Ayun.
Yeah.
A lot of Filipinos are really known internationally. A good example of this would be Bretman Rock na nag-grace na from the covers of Nylon.
Yeah.
Having his own YouTube channel, YouTube shows, YouTube originals. MTV gracing New York Fashion Week. Like, sobrang talagang galing ng Pinoy kung titignan mo talaga. Like, sobrang taba ng utak. And I think Filipinos are really known for that. And more kilalang Filipino celebrities internationally, sila Bella Poarch, internationally sila Bella Poarch, si Olivia Rodrigo, Nicole Scherzinger.
Nakahirap i-spell tsaka
Ang hirap i-spell. Sino pa ba yung mga kilala natin mga Pinoys na kilala? In terms of fashion naman, meron tayo si Leroy New. Siya ang gumawa ng bustier ni Lady Gaga for the Merry the Night music.
Garner?
Kilala din sino kasi yung ating resident designer na kilala sa ibang bansa na nag-debut ng Asia's Next Top Model. Kung naalala mo yan. Yung basura.
Michael Cinco?
Si Michael Cinco, ayan.
Tama.
You know, like, if the government really funded the industry, pwede na tayong, you know, the grades within Korea, Japan. We can have our own film festivals.
Yeah.
And speaking of films, we have Martika Escobar na nakasali ng this year Sundance 2022 for her film Leonor Will Never Die. And last year, sumali din si Excuse Me, Miss na galing from Q Cinema Shorts. And you see the talent of our fellow Filipinos talaga. And, you know, not just that, kasi ang art sector, kung lumaki yung art sector, it would give more jobs. Boost ang economy. Look at Korea, nabibili mga CDs sila, yung mga merches nila and everything. And it factors our economy, yung GDP tataas, unemployment rate bababa, yung employment rate tataas and everything. And I think it's time to really invest in this kasi you know, ito ang films, music, literature is our form of it's our form of relaxation, it's our form of, you know, recreation. It's forming, you know, social, you know, nagkakaroon ng conversations about it, and it's very, very important. Not saying na hindi important ang, you know, ang
ibang aspects,
ibang professions, but I think it's time.
Yeah. Na-overlook kasi.
Oo. And I think with the possibility of Vogue Philippines coming for September 2022,
I'm
excited ako dyan. And you know, nandito na ang Nylon, itong L'Officiel. And I think it's possible just with the right funding. And I think it's not a bad funding dahil importante ang arts and culture sector dito. In every country naman talaga. Kasi like, look at the US.
Actually, in the world.
Like, tingnan mo US, every year may $320 billion US dollars na pumapasok just because of the art sector. And I think in South Africa, if I'm right with my information, tumaas siya ng 1% employment rate, and that is actually a big deal. Kahit 1% lang siya.
Yeah.
Tingnan mo.
Malaki yun.
Malaki talaga siya. Like, it's big. Sabi nga nila, hindi mabubuo ang piso pag hindi mabubuo ang milyon pag walang piso. So, important. Yeah.
Ayan.
So, I think yun ang aking advocacy. Reiterating lang, you know, funding of the art sector. Yun lang naman.
Ayan. So, ayan na nga yung mga advocacies namin. And unfortunately nga, nagkaroon ng technical problem ang ating resident patroller na si MX Marko Soleman. Pero, of course, the show must go on.
Oh, yeah.
So, ayan, na-present na namin ang mga kanya-kanya naming mga economic globalization advocacies. And, of course, sabi nga nila, kung may start, may finish. At ayan, dito na nga magtatapos ang ating episode. And of course, if you like this episode and podcast, please give it a thumbs up, and hit that subscribe button. And if may mga gusto pa kayong makapagawa or gusto kayong i-share or i-comment, i-comment nyo yan sa ibaba para naman malaman namin ang tindig ng masang kalaklan.
Yes.
And ayan.
Tama. And you know, on that note, reiterate lang natin sinabi natin for the first episode that it's very timely. Ngayong nalalapit na halalan 2022 ay maging mabusisi sa mga kandidato, ipaglaban ang karapatang pantao at syempre, huwag kalilimutan bumoto. Ayun. At sino ka naman dyan, Mare?
At ako, ang cutie pie na dinadayo all the way from the land of samgyupsalan, mga nagtatayuhang kapehan at tunay kapampangan. Ako, si Jello Serrano. At sino ka naman dyan, Mare?
Ako nga ang kilalang sumisinghot ng tajin na nagmamay-ari lamang ng bansang Tunisia, Malaysia, Philippines. Ako kilalang bilang resident Mama Ru ng AGCOM 2A. Ako si Angelo hailing from the land of Lubao, Pampanga. At ito ang
Oh my globalization. Bye.
Bye for now. Mwah, mwah, mwah.
Bye, Marko.